Hey there, church family. Okay, now we're really starting to get into it. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you made it through the Beatitudes and all that. Now we're starting to get some real meat. And again, I want to apologize for those of you who have tried to join this challenge and you couldn't figure out how to friend me in YouVersion. That was my fault. And hopefully if you watched the last video, I explained that better. I also updated the instructions on the pinned comment on the Ocean Park Community Church Facebook page. Just look for my email address, and it's michael@kwe.net. And you should see a profile picture of me in my Air Force ABUs, so my military camouflage uniforms, and it'll be in a profile like this with a hat on, like that. Okay. And as soon as you send me that friend request, I'll accept it, and then you can see what studies I'm doing, and then you can add the Sermon on the Mount study and catch up. This is day 13, lucky 13. We are now, going through Matthew 5:17 through 48. So pretty much the whole thing. We're starting to break it down, but here we're talking about Christ and the old law in this part. And some things I wanted to point out here is Jesus really, and again, some of this is going to be repeating what he said, but I really want to drive the points home. Jesus is really wanting to make sure that the people understand he is not there to basically get rid of everything they've ever believed and thought of. That would be, what's the best way to put it? That would create such a questioning of belief. I mean, what would you think if somebody came up to you and, well, here's a good example. Let's say you're 30 years old and your parents came up to you as a 30-year-old. You're 30 years old now. They said, "Oh, by the way, we just want to let you know you're adopted." And you're going, "What? Why are you telling me this now? What does this mean? So I've lived this, do you mean I've lived a lie? Everything I've lived up to this point is not true? You know, what's going on?" So Jesus wanted to stop all that from happening. And he basically also he also wanted to make sure that people didn't think that everything in the Old Testament was null and void, and it didn't really matter, and that people had wasted their time dealing with it. You know, just pretty much like it says here. But you could imagine that, you know, people were fearful that happened, especially whenever the Bible, in the New Testament, whenever they're talking about the Jews, and they use the phrase the Jews, it's usually they're talking about the Jewish leadership, the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees. So that's what that comment means. It's not all the Jewish people. It's the Jewish quote unquote elite. The creme de la creme of righteous piety, I guess is one way to put it. Jesus isn't. Jesus is also talking to those people, saying, you know, everything that you guys believe still holds true. Law of Moses, all that. He didn't come here to mess with any of that stuff. Next, we go down. We're talking about life in the kingdom of God is the true fulfillment of God's moral law. And they kind of define some terms there. And I like the first one, sets aside. You know, and it says here, some believe that the Pharisees did this with their practical rules and casualty, I can't pronounce that word, which they interpreted the law. Basically, they put their interpretation and their traditions above what was actually written in the Torah. The least of the commandments is a good one. We cannot rank. I mean, who are we to rank the commandments of God? Okay, He gave them to us, right? 1 through 10, but He didn't say in order of importance or in order of priority or the ones that mean the most to Him. He gave us the 10 commandments. Actually, He gave us a lot more commandments than that, but they're not necessarily in any particular order that we know of, other than the order that God gave them to Noah. So with that in mind, the only thing we can do is treat them all equally. That's the best we can do. If we start to try to rank them ourselves, like, love your neighbor isn't as important as, honor your father and mother or whatever, we're going to get ourselves messed up. So don't do it. Don't do it. The third one here, really good one. Teaches others accordingly. And before you teach, you have to put it into practice. I know we have a very old common saying now that those who can do and those who can't teach. Well, what really should be the case is those who can do well should teach. Should do and teach, rather. I've always been of the belief that a person who's actually done something, been there, done that, is the better teacher than someone who's never done that. And I use the example of like a college professor that teaches business classes but has never run a business. He's just always been a business professor. What does he know about business? Honestly, he knows nothing about business because his whole world has been in academia. So he knows nothing about running a business. He knows what he's read and what he's heard and what he's seen. He has not experienced anything related to running a business. And then you have a high school dropout who's run a business since they were 15 to support their family. They know a lot more about running a business than the PhD professor does who's never run a business. So it's not a matter of what you know up here. It's a matter of what you have put into practice and used. That is what you can teach. And we all strive for, the last one here is we all strive for righteousness. We should be anyway, which is another word for justification or conformity to God's will. And that's an inward thing. That's not. Remember, God sees inside of us. He sees who we are inside. So it doesn't matter what we're putting on the outside. It doesn't matter, if I'm wearing a T-shirt that says, God is great. Even though that's not the T-shirt I'm wearing. I'm wearing a Land of the Free with a golden retriever on it at the moment. From Buc-ee's, by the way. I think. No, I got this one from... Oh, well, doesn't matter. What matters is our heart in showing that we, as best we can in our old sinful bodies, try to be righteous before God. I'm going to read this last one here, the last bit. John 3:5 states that to enter the kingdom of God, one must be born of water and of the Spirit. The only way to surpass the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees is by being born again. Only those who are made righteous can act righteously. So do you think you're good enough, or do you acknowledge that you require God's righteousness in your life? I 100 bazillion thousand % not good enough. Never in a moment, never for a millisecond thought I was, and never will, I hope. The most righteous among us is not righteous enough to get in heaven of their own accord. We talked about this in the sermon I preached last week. The good talking about the Good Samaritan, and the lawyer that Jesus was talking to, that he told that story to, and how impossible it was to love your neighbor as yourself. And if you can't do that, then you can't enter the kingdom of God. And so with that said, we have nothing of our own that we can do to be that person that can get into heaven on our own. It's Christ that gets us in there. Like I said in yesterday's thing, which I'm gonna start incorporating that a lot more. I love that. The broken mirror analogy. You need to let that light of Jesus reflect off of you to others. Be that shard of a mirror. That way when somebody looks at you, like, you ever looked at somebody wearing like mirrored sunglasses, and you look at them just right, and the sun bounces off of their lenses and hits you in the face. You can't really see them because you're kind of blinded by that light. That's how you want others to see you. You want them to be blinded by the light of Christ in you. That all they can see in you is that light of Christ when they look at you. That's the goal we all need to be striving for. And then through our actions and deeds, show that love of Christ. Let's do that. Let's make that happen, folks. Let's get some more people in on this. Leave some comments below. Talk about what you got out of this, what you read through, what you got out of the reading, not only of the Word, because there's a lot of reading in this, different books of the New Testament and Old Testament, but also what you got out of the devotion part here as well. Let me know what you think about all this stuff, your insights and opinions, because that helps us all grow together. And on that note, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.